The elevator doors slid shut with a final, definitive click. 20 floors above, the board members were already assembling for the meeting that would determine the future of not just Horizon Industries, but the careers of everyone in the building, including single father Mark Reynolds. As his boss, Victoria Chen, slammed her hand against the elevator wall in frustration, neither of them could have imagined how those 20 flights of stairs would change their lives forever. If you've ever believed that one moment of courage can transform everything, this story might just give you the push you need today. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that remind us of the extraordinary possibilities hidden in ordinary lives. Mark Reynolds wiped the sweat from his brow as he stared at his phone screen. The text from Mrs. Patel, his 7-year-old daughter Lily's babysitter, glowed accusingly, running late. Traffic accident. Be there in 30 minutes. He glanced at his watch, 8:15 a.m. His morning staff meeting started in 15 minutes, and his boss, Victoria Chen, the newly appointed CEO of Horizon Industries, had made it abundantly clear that tardiness was unacceptable. The past year had been the hardest of Mark's life. After losing his wife, Sarah, to cancer, he'd been struggling to balance raising Lily alone with his demanding job as the head of product development. Every day felt like walking a tightrope without a safety net. One misstep at work could cost him his job, one failure at home could break his daughter's heart all over again. With trembling fingers, he dialed his neighbor, Mrs. Greenberg. "Please," he whispered as the phone rang. "Please pick up." When she answered, Mark nearly collapsed with relief. "Mrs. Greenberg, I hate to ask, but could Lily stay with you until her regular sitter arrives? I have an important meeting." 10 minutes later, Mark was sprinting through the lobby of the Horizon Industries building. He'd made it. Barely. The main elevator was crowded with people heading up to their offices, but he squeezed in, pressing the button for the 20th floor. As the doors began to close, he heard a familiar, authoritative voice. "Hold the elevator." Victoria Chen, the 35-year-old CEO who had taken over the company 6 months ago, hurried across the lobby. Mark instinctively stuck his arm out, keeping the doors from closing. Victoria slipped inside, nodding curtly at him. "Reynolds. Good morning." "Good morning, Ms. Chen," Mark replied, trying not to stare. Victoria was wearing her trademark crisp white suit, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun that emphasized her high cheekbones and intense brown eyes. Everything about her screamed perfection and control, the complete opposite of Mark's chaotic life. The elevator began its ascent, and Mark allowed himself a moment of relief. He'd made it. The meeting would go forward, his presentation was ready, and for once, things seemed to be falling into place. Then, between the 5th and 6th floors, the elevator jerked to a sudden stop. The lights flickered, and the car went completely still. "What the hell?" Victoria muttered, jabbing at the buttons. A mechanical voice came over the speaker, "Attention, passengers. We are experiencing a technical difficulty with the elevator system. Maintenance has been notified. Please remain calm." Mark's heart sank. He checked his watch again, 8:25 a.m. The meeting was in 5 minutes, and it wasn't just any meeting. Today, Victoria was presenting their new product line to the board of directors, and Mark's department was the centerpiece of that presentation. Everything he'd worked for over the past year, all the late nights, the weekends spent at the office instead of with Lily, it all came down to this meeting. Victoria was already on her phone. "This is Chen. I'm stuck in elevator 3. How long until it's fixed?" Her face darkened as she listened to the response. 2 hours? That's completely unacceptable. The board meeting starts in 5 minutes. She paused, listening again. No, rescheduling is not an option. These people flew in from across the country specifically for this meeting. When she hung up, Mark saw something he'd never witnessed before. Victoria Chen looked scared. Not annoyed or angry, genuinely frightened. "The board members," she said, almost to herself. They're already questioning my leadership. If I miss this meeting. She trailed off, then straightened her shoulders. There must be another way up. The stairs, Mark suggested. It's 20 floors, but it's doable. Victoria looked at him as if he'd suggested they fly to the roof. 20 floors in these? She gestured to her 4-inch heels. And I'm carrying 50 pounds of product samples and presentation materials in my briefcase. Mark made a quick decision. I can carry you. Excuse me? Victoria's perfectly arched eyebrows shot up. I can carry you. And your briefcase. Even as the words left his mouth, Mark couldn't believe what he was saying. This was Victoria Chen, his boss, the woman who terrified every employee in the building with her exacting standards and cool demeanor. That's absurd, Victoria said, but her eyes darted to the elevator doors and then to her watch. More absurd than missing the meeting that could determine the future of the company? Mark countered. Look, I go to the gym 5 days a week, and I have a 7-year-old who thinks piggyback rides are a basic human right. I can do this. For a long moment, Victoria stared at him, clearly weighing her limited options. Finally, she nodded. If you drop me, you're fired, she said, but there was the faintest hint of a smile at the corner of her mouth. After prying the elevator doors open and forcing their way out onto the 5th floor, they found the emergency stairwell. Mark knelt down. Hop on, he said, offering his back. Victoria hesitated, then carefully climbed onto his back, wrapping her arms around his shoulders. Mark stood, adjusting to her weight, and took her briefcase in one hand. Ready? As I'll ever be, Victoria replied, her breath warm against his ear. The first 5 floors weren't so bad. Mark had been honest, he was in good shape, and Victoria was lighter than he'd expected. But by the 10th floor, his legs were beginning to burn, and sweat soaked through his dress shirt. He paused on the landing, catching his breath. You can put me down, Victoria offered. I can walk a few floors. Mark shook his head. We'll lose too much time. We've got 10 more floors. I can do it. As they continued upward, something unexpected happened. Victoria Chen, the Ice Queen of Horizon Industries, began to talk. Really talk. My father was on the board of this company for 30 years, she said softly. When he died last year, they gave me his position out of respect for him. But when the CEO stepped down 6 months ago, no one expected them to choose me as his replacement. Especially not the other board members. Mark, focusing on putting one foot in front of the other, managed a breathless, why not? Because I'm a woman. Because I'm young. Because I worked my way up through design rather than sales or finance. Take your pick. There was a bitterness in her voice that Mark had never heard before. This meeting, if I don't impress them today, they'll start looking for reasons to replace me. By the 15th floor, Mark's legs felt like jelly, and each step was an act of pure willpower. Victoria must have felt him struggling, because she tightened her grip, almost as if she was trying to help carry herself. Tell me about your daughter, she said suddenly. Lily, right? Mark was surprised she knew his daughter's name. She's 7. Smart as a whip. Stubborn as her mother was. Was? Mark swallowed hard, focusing on the next step. My wife died. Cancer. 14 months ago. Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then, so softly he almost didn't hear it, she said, I'm sorry. I didn't know. It's not something I talk about at work, Mark replied. I try to keep my personal life separate. How's that working out for you? There was no judgment in her voice, only genuine curiosity. Mark laughed, the sound echoing in the concrete stairwell. Terribly. Her babysitter was late this morning. I almost missed the meeting. Yet here you are, carrying your boss up 20 flights of stairs. Here I am, Mark agreed. They reached the 18th floor, and Mark's legs nearly gave out. He stumbled, and Victoria gasped, tightening her grip around his neck. For a terrifying moment, he thought they were both going to tumble backward down the stairs. But somehow, he found his balance and kept going. 2 more floors, Victoria whispered, and it sounded almost like a prayer. Mark's world had narrowed to the next step, and the next. His back ached, his legs burned, and his lungs felt like they were on fire. But he kept climbing. Because giving up wasn't an option. It hadn't been an option when Sarah got sick, it wasn't an option when she died, and it certainly wasn't an option now. As they reached the 20th floor landing, the door to the stairwell burst open, and a security guard appeared, looking concerned. "Miss Chen? Maintenance reported you were stuck in an elevator. As you can see, I found an alternative mode of transportation," Victoria replied smoothly, sliding off Mark's back. She straightened her suit and took her briefcase from Mark's hand. "What time is it?" 8:32, ma'am." "Perfect. We're not even late." She turned to Mark, who was leaning against the wall, trying to catch his breath. His shirt was soaked with sweat, his hair was a mess, and he was certain he looked nothing like the polished head of product development he was supposed to be. "Can you still present?" Mark nodded, straightening up with effort. "Give me 2 minutes to splash some water on my face." Victoria gave him a look he couldn't quite interpret. Then she nodded. "Thank you, Reynolds. I won't forget this." The meeting went better than either of them could have hoped. Despite his disheveled appearance, Mark's presentation was flawless, and the board members were visibly impressed with the new product line. Victoria was in her element, fielding questions with confidence and charm that Mark had never witnessed before. It was as if their shared ordeal on the stairs had unlocked something in her, a warmth and humanity that made her more persuasive, more relatable. When the meeting ended, the board members filed out, several of them stopping to shake Mark's hand and compliment his work. Victoria remained seated at the head of the table, watching him. When the last board member had left, she approached him. "You saved my career today," she said simply. Mark shook his head. "You saved it yourself. You were brilliant in there. Because you got me here." She paused, seeming uncharacteristically hesitant. "Why did you do it? You could have just let me figure it out on my own." "Most people would have." Mark considered the question. "Because it was the right thing to do. Because we're a team, even if you are the boss. Because..." He trailed off, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. Victoria looked up at him, her eyes softer than he'd ever seen them. "Wanna have dinner with me?" she asked. Mark blinked, certain he'd misheard. "What? Dinner? You and me? Tonight? Or another night, if tonight doesn't work with your daughter's schedule? Are you asking me on a date?" Victoria Chen, the woman who struck fear into the hearts of executives across the industry, actually blushed. "I'm asking you to have dinner with me. We can decide if it's a date over appetizers." That evening, after arranging for Mrs. Patel to stay late, Mark found himself sitting across from Victoria at a small Italian restaurant downtown. She'd changed from her white suit into a simple blue dress, and her hair was down, falling in soft waves around her shoulders. She looked like a completely different person, or perhaps, Mark realized, this was the real Victoria, the one she kept hidden behind her professional facade. "I've never done this before," Victoria admitted, twirling pasta around her fork. "Dated an employee." So it was a date. Mark felt a flutter of something he hadn't experienced in a long time. "I've never carried my boss up 20 flights of stairs before, so I guess we're both breaking new ground today." Victoria laughed, a genuine, unguarded sound that transformed her face. "Tell me about Lily. What's she like?" Mark pulled out his phone and showed her a photo of his daughter, her dark curls a wild halo around her face, her smile revealing a missing front tooth. "She's amazing. Resilient. When Sarah died, I thought. He swallowed hard. I thought neither of us would ever be okay again. But Lily, she just keeps going. Finding joy in things. Reminding me to do the same. Victoria reached across the table and touched his hand. She sounds like her father. The conversation flowed easily after that. Mark learned that Victoria had grown up in the shadow of her father's success, always trying to prove herself worthy of the Chen name. She'd worked twice as hard as everyone else, sacrificed a personal life for her career, and still felt like an imposter most days. Mark told her about the challenges of being a single parent, about the guilt he felt when work kept him from Lily, and about his fears that he wasn't enough for his daughter. I think we're more alike than I realized, Victoria said as they shared a tiramisu. Both trying to live up to impossible standards. Both afraid of failing the people who count on us. Both hiding parts of ourselves at work, Mark added. Victoria nodded. It's exhausting, isn't it? It is. But maybe. Mark hesitated, then took a chance. Maybe we don't have to do it alone. Their first date turned into a second, and then a third. 2 weeks after the stairwell incident, Victoria asked to meet Lily. Mark was nervous. Lily had been the center of his world since Sarah died, and he'd been careful about introducing her to the women he'd occasionally dated. But something about Victoria felt different, more substantial. They met at a park on a sunny Saturday afternoon. Victoria arrived with a kite in one hand and a basket of cupcakes in the other. I wasn't sure what 7-year-olds like, she admitted, looking uncharacteristically nervous. You're overthinking it, Mark reassured her. Just be yourself. Lily approached them cautiously, her small hand gripping Mark's tightly. Are you Daddy's boss? She asked bluntly. Victoria knelt down to Lily's level. I am at work. But today, I'm just Victoria. I brought a kite. Do you know how to fly one? Lily shook her head, eyes wide. Neither do I, Victoria confessed. Want to figure it out together? By the end of the afternoon, the three of them were laughing as the kite dipped and soared in the blue sky. Mark watched in amazement as Victoria, who commanded boardrooms with iron control, surrendered completely to the joy of running across the grass with his daughter, her hair coming loose from its ponytail, her designer jeans grass-stained at the knees. That night, after Lily was in bed, Victoria lingered at Mark's door. She's wonderful, she said softly. She liked you, Mark replied. She doesn't warm up to people easily, not since Sarah died. Victoria was quiet for a moment. Mark, I need to be honest about something. It's complicated. I'm your boss. There are company policies about this sort of thing. I know. Mark had been thinking about the same issue. What do you want to do? I don't know. But I do know that today was the most fun I've had in years. And when I'm with you, I feel like myself for the first time in, maybe ever. She looked up at him, vulnerability in her eyes. I don't want to give that up. Mark took her hand. Then we'll figure it out. Together. The following months weren't easy. They kept their relationship quiet at work, which meant maintaining a professional distance that sometimes felt impossible. The board continued to scrutinize Victoria's every decision, and Mark still struggled with the balance between work and parenting. But they found strength in each other, in the growing bond between them. 6 months after the day Mark carried Victoria up 20 flights of stairs, they faced another crisis. The company's main competitor announced a product that threatened to make Horizon's newest line obsolete before it even launched. The board called an emergency meeting, and Victoria found herself defending not just her leadership but the future of the company. Mark sat beside her at the conference table, their teams aligned behind them. As the board members voiced their doubts and fears, he watched Victoria straighten her shoulders, the same way she had in the elevator that day. Gentlemen, she said, her voice calm and confident. 6 months ago, I stood in this room and promised you that Horizon Industries would lead innovation in our field. That promise hasn't changed. What has changed is our approach." She nodded to Mark, who distributed a new presentation to the board members. "Mr. Reynolds and his team have been working on a contingency plan since we first heard rumors of our competitor's new product. I'd like him to walk you through it." Mark stood, feeling Victoria's quiet support beside him. "When we face obstacles in this business, we have two choices: panic or adapt. Today, we choose to adapt." The plan was risky but brilliant, a pivot that would reposition their product as a premium alternative with features their competitor couldn't match. As Mark outlined the strategy, he saw the doubt in the board members' eyes gradually transform into cautious optimism. When the meeting ended, the board chairman approached Victoria. "Impressive work, Ms. Chen. Your father would be proud." After everyone else had left, Victoria turned to Mark. "We did it," she whispered, allowing herself a moment of relief. "You did it," Mark corrected her. "You were amazing in there." Victoria shook her head. "We're a team, remember? Just like you said that day on the stairs." She took a deep breath. "Which is why I've made a decision. I'm going to speak to HR about our relationship. It's time to make it official." "Are you sure?" The board just saw what we can accomplish together. If they have a problem with us being together outside of work, they can take it up with the results we're delivering." She smiled, a determined glint in her eye. "Besides, I'm tired of pretending I don't care about you when we're in this building. Life's too short for that." That evening, they celebrated with Lily at Mark's apartment. As Victoria helped his daughter with her homework, Mark was struck by how natural it felt, the three of them together, creating something that felt remarkably like a family. Later, as Lily slept and they sat on the balcony looking at the city lights, Victoria leaned her head against Mark's shoulder. "Do you ever think about that day? When the elevator broke down?" "Only every time I see a stairwell," Mark replied with a laugh. "I was so scared," Victoria admitted. "Not just about the meeting, but about letting anyone see that I needed help. I've spent my whole life proving I could do everything on my own. And I've spent the past 2 years trying to prove I could be both parents to Lily. That I didn't need anyone else." Mark wrapped his arm around Victoria's shoulders. "We were both wrong, weren't we?" Victoria nodded. "Needing people isn't weakness. It took me a long time to learn that." 20 floors, to be exact, Mark teased. 1 year to the day after their elevator adventure, Mark and Victoria stood in the same stairwell where their journey had begun. Mark had arranged for Lily to stay with Mrs. Greenberg, telling Victoria they were going out for an anniversary dinner. Instead, he'd led her to the Horizon building and into the emergency stairs. "Why are we here?" Victoria asked, confused. Mark took her hand and led her up to the 5th floor landing, the spot where they'd escaped the broken elevator. He stopped, turning to face her. "This is where everything changed," he said softly. 1 year ago today, I carried you up these stairs, and somewhere between the 5th floor and the 20th, I started falling for you." Victoria smiled, her eyes suspiciously bright. "It was around the 12th floor for me. When you told me about Sarah, and you didn't give up even though you were exhausted. That's when I knew you were someone special." Mark reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Victoria's eyes widened as he knelt down on one knee. "Victoria Chen, this past year has taught me that we're stronger together than we ever were apart. You've become not just my partner but Lily's hero. You've shown me that it's okay to need someone, to lean on someone. And I want to spend the rest of my life being the person you lean on." He opened the box, revealing a simple but elegant diamond ring. "Will you marry me?" Tears spilled down Victoria's cheeks as she nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." As Mark slipped the ring onto her finger, Victoria laughed through her tears. "Does this mean we have to climb the rest of the stairs to celebrate?" Actually, Mark said, standing and pulling her into his arms, I was thinking we could take the elevator this time. They did take the elevator, all the way to the roof, where Mark had arranged a private dinner under the stars, with the city lights spread out below them. As they toasted their future, Victoria looked at him with the same soft expression she'd revealed on their first dinner date. You know, she said thoughtfully, most people spend their lives searching for someone who will help them carry their burdens. I got lucky, I found someone who literally carried me when I couldn't make it on my own. Mark smiled, taking her hand. And I found someone worth climbing 20 flights of stairs for. 3 months later, they were married in a small ceremony with Lily as their flower girl. The board chairman gave a toast, joking about how Victoria had elevated the company while Mark had taken things to new heights. Only a few people understood the stairwell reference, but Mark and Victoria exchanged knowing smiles. In the years that followed, they faced their share of challenges, both at work and at home. Victoria eventually became the longest-serving CEO in the company's history, breaking barriers and setting new standards for leadership in their industry. Mark's department thrived under his guidance, and he finally found the balance between work and family that had seemed impossible before Victoria entered their lives. Lily grew into a confident young woman who inherited her stepmother's determination and her father's compassion. When she was 16, she asked to hear the elevator story again, though she'd heard it countless times before. I still can't believe Dad carried you up 20 floors, she said to Victoria as they sat together in their living room. It's not the most unbelievable part of the story, Victoria replied, squeezing Mark's hand. The real miracle was that two people who had spent years hiding behind their professional masks finally let someone see who they really were. Mark smiled, thinking about how far they'd come. Sometimes the longest journey isn't measured in floors or miles, he said. It's measured in the walls we break down, in the fears we overcome, in the love we find when we least expect it. And that, dear viewers, is the real message of this story. Life will always present us with broken elevators, obstacles that seem insurmountable, challenges that leave us feeling stranded. But if we find the courage to try another way, to accept help when we need it, and to offer help when others are struggling, we might just discover something extraordinary waiting for us at the top of those metaphorical stairs. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more stories that remind us of the power of human connection. Remember, the most beautiful journeys often begin with a single step, even if that step is on a staircase you never planned to climb.